Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mala Tao, and I'm the Vice President of Individual Giving here at the Greater Twin Cities United Way. I'm coming to you from inside my office in downtown Minneapolis, also the native land of the Dakota people. We are honored to have you here spending your lunch hour with us. Please feel free to have your lunch and listen in. If you haven't done so already, please enter your name in the chat. Also your location, where you're joining us from, your organization, your role, and one word that comes to mind when you think about financial stability. While you're doing that, we have some housekeeping items before we get started. We'll be taking some questions throughout our time together and reserve 15 minutes at the end of the session. You can enter your questions in the chat and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Closed caption is enabled and this webinar is being recorded. In a day or two, you will receive an email of the recording and the slides. Now, I know many of you are joining us, our loyal donors. Thank you for your generosity and your support. Some of you are familiar with the Greater Twin Cities United Way's work, while others less so. Our vision is bold, a community where all people thrive regardless of income, race, or place. What gives us the courage to think we can achieve our mission and vision, our 5 unique roles we hold in our region because of our long history of deep partnerships. First, we play the role of bridge through our 211 resource helpline to meet people's basic needs day or night. Second, we play the role of a nonprofit amplifier by strengthening our region's direct service providers through grants, convening, and technical assistance. Third, we fulfill our role of advocate by leading and supporting coalitions to make smart policy changes, including one of our current priorities to address benefit cliffs that cause unintended barriers to economic independence. Fourth, we are a regional innovator when we make targeted investments above and beyond our core work to overcome daunting barriers like racial inequities in our education and workforce system. And finally, we advance equity as a business partner by aligning corporate philanthropic goals with community needs to address problems no one can solve alone. One of our many efforts to ensure that we get more dollars into the community is through our Giving Communities program. Our programs are by and for community. Striving for racial and financial equity, Women United sees a community where all women have a path of financial stability and all children have access to high quality early childhood education, high quality child care and education. Since 2003, Women United have supported over 3,000 women with financial stability, had close to 4,000 individuals joined to advocate for affordable, accessible care and education as part of the Start Early Funders Coalition, had over 26,000 children and families with high quality early learning opportunities, and invested more than $6 million into the community. So to join this passionate group of donors who invest in local programs that help women and children build a foundation for a thriving future, you may email me at womenunited@gtcuw.org. The generosity of our loyal donors and our friends and our supporters allow us to do the important work. Many of you are with us today. We cannot thank you enough for the partnership in our mission. Now, I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Eva Song Margolis, who is a program officer of the Economic Opportunity with the Holistic Grantmaking Team, where she is responsible for championing United Way's impact area in the areas of economic opportunity. She works with community partners and across sectors, focusing on workforce development and wealth building strategies that bring about equitable change. Eva, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mala. It is an honor to share space with you all. So before hearing from Patty Tototsingle and Sarai Mateo about the groundbreaking work of Esperanza United, I'd like to spend just a few minutes to quickly explore the question of what is financial stability. So I saw folks entering into the chat to the question around what is financial stability, freedom, comfort, calm, peace of mind, all so important, right? That sense of well-being. Well, I'd like to introduce, just for one framing, the Household Financial Security Framework, This was developed by a national nonprofit, Prosperity Now, and is one tool that's helpful for conveying the complexity of financial security strategies by showing the many conditions that need to come together to achieve stability and have pathways to wealth building. And I'd like to note, if you could advance to the next slide with the financial security household framework, that'd be great. Just to note, as I'm quickly walking through this Prosperity Now's framework, I'll be reading actually from some of the resources that they created. So this framework illustrates the iterative process by which households can gain financial skills, increase income, save, leverage savings to purchase assets, and protect those savings and assets, right? So to get there, people need the ability to navigate financial systems. Important to this are financial skills and also executive function, which are acquired early in life and enable people to gather information and make informed decisions. And to do this, households need relevant financial information, knowledge, and skills, such as through financial counseling or credit counseling. And they need educational activities that build children's executive function from early childhood throughout adolescence. Learning how to navigate systems doesn't always have to come from an institution, right? So one of the first lessons that I learned, that I received regarding financial decision making, how to navigate this, was from my parents, who explained the importance of savings. And they also leveraged their own relationship that they had with their bank to open up a savings account for me so that I could put gift money and babysitting income into. I encourage you to try to make this as interactive and as possible. And hopefully the volume is okay here. If So I just encourage you to put into the chat, who or what shaped your early ability to navigate financial decision making? Who or what shaped your early ability to navigate financial decision making? And then we're going to continue on. So education is key to accessing high quality jobs and increasing income. To learn basic skills, acquire credentials, and build job skills, people need affordable early childhood education and quality K-12 education. They need financing that makes post-secondary education affordable and access to job training and apprenticeship programs. Earnings include all money coming into a household through wages, employer benefits, business earnings, public benefits, tax credits, investments, and if we're so fortunate, inheritance. We save to weather emergencies and variations in income. We also use savings to leverage credit to purchase assets, allowing us to plan for the long term. And in order to do this, right, we need employment that provides income and benefits to meet expenses and save, affordable and accessible financial products and services, such as a low or no fee checking account and low minimum balance savings accounts. Savings programs that provide matched savings or seed deposits or other incentives such as individual development accounts. And we also need the elimination of asset limits for public benefits, as these penalize households for savings. I'd like to just take a minute and ask you to think about a young girl in your life, right? And if you could recommend one financial product or service to her that would significantly impact her towards savings, what would that be? For myself, in thinking about the young person in my life, I would encourage her to enroll into her future employer's retirement plan and contribute enough to take advantage of any match that the employer provides. So yeah, again, I just encourage you to enter into the chat if you could recommend one financial product or service that would significantly impact that young girl in your life towards savings. What would that be? So moving along, in order to own, purchase, and maintain assets such as a home or business, people need access to affordable financing and incentives and support such as down payment assistance and tax benefits. And of course, the ability to protect earnings and assets underpins this whole framework. Here, right, we need affordable quality insurance, including unemployment, disability, and health, and homeowners or renters insurance. We need access to services that address emergencies, such as foreclosure prevention programming. And we need policies that protect us from discriminatory or predatory practices that regulate financial services. And as we know, people who are financially poor often pay the highest percent of their income just to access the money that they have and make financial transactions. As James Baldwin has famously said, anyone who has ever struggled with poverty knows how incredibly expensive it is to be poor. So each of these elements builds on and reinforces one another. Challenges in one area can lead to problems in others, causing the framework and the household's financial health to break down. So, for example, if a household doesn't have savings, a financial emergency such as a car repair could drive the family to financial ruin. This framework situates financial stability at the individual and family level, and it's really important and essential to point out and explore the question of what creates financial stability, right, and pathways to wealth within the context of the U.S. racial wealth divide, as well as gender-based economic injustices. For example, although the history of U.S. forced removal and internment of Japanese Americans during World War II is well known, lesser taught is that the removal set into motion a blatant transfer of wealth from Japanese Americans to whites. On February 19, 1942, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, authorizing what was to become the mass forced removal and incarceration of all Japanese Americans on the West Coast. About 127,000 Japanese Americans were forced inland to concentration prison camps that were hastily thrown up in 28 days. People had just 1 week to dispose of their homes, items, and businesses, and many hastily sold their properties, and their white neighbors and speculators bought their farms, houses, and businesses at a fraction of their worth, enriching themselves at their imprisoned neighbors' expense. So, for context, at the time the executive order was signed, in the state of California alone, Japanese American farmers were responsible for about 40% of all vegetable growth in the state, including nearly 100% of all tomatoes, celery, strawberry, and peppers grown. And to note, although they controlled less than 4% of California farmland. And about 3/4 of people were unable to return to their farms and businesses after World War II. Many became tenant farmers on white-owned land. It's also important to note that there were no loans available to these farmers to start over. One thing, just to have us all just take a little poll or a little quiz to the question of what do you think are the estimated total losses in property and assets that Japanese Americans were stripped of as a result of Executive Order 9066 during their internment? A, 500,000 in 1942 or 1.8 million today. And just to note, excuse me, before doing so, you can participate by texting Live United 112 to 22333. And once you're able to join in, then you can just text back A, B, or C. Right. So again, A is 500,000 in 1942, 1.7 million in 1942, 40.8 million, or 200 million. And then again, in the parentheses, the dollar amounts have been adjusted to show inflation for today. Give it just a couple of seconds here. Thanks so much, Alexis, for putting that link into the chat. And just to know, I'm kind of scrolling through and seeing all these really powerful, beautiful responses. Such a wealth of knowledge and experience here in this virtual room. So the actual answer for the, again, rough estimate of the total losses is 200 million in 1942 or $3.7 billion today. So there's no shortage of examples of economic injustice, especially at the intersections of colonialism and genocide, chattel slavery, war and Orientalism, and patriarchy, right? But the point in raising up this particular example is to remember that historical trauma are not enacted upon individuals or individual households, right? They're enacted upon entire communities and generations of people. And therefore, our economic policies and our practices, and as well as our dreaming for change, right, which impact people at the household level, cannot just focus on individual wealth creation. They must be community-oriented. There must be a community-oriented approach. And that's why I'm so excited to introduce and to share space here with Esperanza United, who's here to speak about their work. So it's my honor to introduce our presenters. First, we have Patty Tototingle, is President and CEO of Esperanza United, whose founded mission is to mobilize Latinas in the Latina community to end gender-based violence. Patty has 38 years of experience in community development and nonprofit management and is committed to working in with communities of color and immigrant communities. She's on the boards of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda Neighborhood Development Center here in the Twin Cities and its national affiliate, the Build From Within Alliance. And Patty is also appointed by the Minnesota governor to join the Minnesota Young Women's Initiative Council. We also have Sarai Mateo, who is the Refugio Manager at Esperanza United. She has experience in shelter, community, legal advocacy, and transitional housing services. She also has expertise in the areas of domestic violence, sexual assault victimization, legal advocacy for immigrant survivors, and economic empowerment. Under her leadership, Esperanza United has expanded and integrated financial literacy training for staff and participants, and she has also supported other advocates in developing critical thinking strategies to implement creative problem-solving solutions when working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. So it's my honor to turn the mic over to Patty and Sarai.
Thank you, Eva. Can you hear me okay? Does my sound all right? Okay.
I hear you well.
Well, thank you again. We are thrilled to be here. And as I had mentioned in a previous conversation, we could talk all day about our work, but we're going to do the short version today. So, and it's really a story of from local to national and national to local, as we have moved forward since 1982. Can you get the next slide, please? So Esperanza United mobilizes Latinas and Latino communities to end gender-based violence. Formerly Casa de Esperanza and the National Latino Network, Esperanza United was founded in 1982 by a small group of persevering Latinas as an emergency shelter in St. Paul. And we continue to ground our work in community strengths and wisdoms as we serve Latinos locally and also across the country. Our previous director, prior to me becoming a CEO, was Lupe Serrano. And Lupe was a force in the Latino community. And she was the director here from, I think, about 1999 or 2000 to 2007, and then became the president of the organization, doing national work until 2009, when she passed away from cancer. But she left a long legacy, and one of her statements was always, when you start with needs, you get programs. When you start with strengths, you get possibilities. She was very entrepreneurial, and she believed in kind of having that vision and looking for opportunities, but always looking at the strengths of individuals, of communities, of organizations. And that is something that is embedded. I think it's part of our DNA. And I know other organizations and leaders across the country also continue to rely on that statement, because we're, every community has needs, but she explained again that we're not a needy people. And what we have are strengths and gifts and talents and assets. And so that's how we do our work. Thank you. Our journey began in 1982 as Casa de Esperanza, and we opened a 24/7 emergency shelter initially in the YWCA downtown St. Paul, where they leased for a very reasonable price, I understand, 1 or 2 floors, and it was volunteer led. And the women that founded it were also there all the time. And in 1984, we bought the house that is still our shelter today. We've done a lot of remodeling over the years, but it is still the shelter. In 2000, as a result of listening sessions in Minneapolis, we started our community or mobile advocacy, as people call it. But really, we've been embedded in community advocacy for, many, many years. working with women where they're at and meeting them where they're at. It's not just about taking a crisis line call and then meeting a person once if they can't come into the shelter. Many of our community participants we work with for up to 2 years. And so it's really a big part of our work now. The other thing we launched in about that time was Fuerza Unida, which is United in Strength. And that was to look at our community engagement and prevention work. In 2004, we developed the Latina Líderes Initiative, which was a peer-to-peer leadership development training. And the líderes that were trained would be able to do peer education workshops, other sessions for women in the community. 2009, we launched our National Latino Network, which consisted of the training and technical assistance that we had started to do previously with grants from the Office on Violence Against Women. And then we added policy advocacy and research and evaluation. In 2023, so fast forward, we now have 60 plus staff across the country, with about half here and a budget of $10 million. It's not the agency I envisioned when I first started in 2002, but it's the agency I'm very proud of. Now, the majority of that budget is for our national work. We are funded as the National Resource Center by HHS, and so bulk of the money has come from HHS. Next slide.
Thank you, United Way, for hosting us today. My name is Sarai, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. What success looks like. I'm going to talk a little bit about our initiative. I work under the Family Advocacy Initiative at Esperanza United. And at Esperanza United, we serve more than 750 individuals per year throughout our different advocacy initiatives. Yearly, we have more than 50 individuals just in our shelter, where we provide emergency shelter services and culturally relevant advocacy support and services. Along with shelter services, we have our community services, where our advocates assist participants and their children who live in the community and need domestic violence advocacy services without having to leave their home or their community. Our community services include our advocacy support from advocates who are also working out of different sites, including the Domestic Abuse Office in Hennepin County and Bridges to Safety in the Ramsey County Courthouse. At these sites, we assist specifically with orders for protection for survivors who are undergoing intimate partner violence. Our crisis line, which is accessible 24/7 with bilingual advocacy, support, is the main entry point of domestic support for anyone who's calling our crisis line or individuals who are looking to connect to resources. Each survivor of domestic violence and participants we serve define and measure their own success very differently, and no matter if they have big or small goals to achieve, our advocates assist along the way onto the path to financial stability. At Esperanza United, we focus on our participants' strengths and believe in the capacity to make their own informed decisions when presented with the proper information. As Patty mentioned before, we believe in the strength and abilities of our participants, so we emphasize those skills throughout our work with the participants. Our initiative's overreaching goals are to increase the safety and well-being of the Latinas and their families we serve, to increase participants' access to resources and community connections, and to increase empowerment, independence, and financial stability for the participants that we serve. This can only happen when participants identify their own goals, navigate and learn about appropriate resources, and the support continues to build economic empowerment through their long-term goals that they have. Here, as you can see, we have a picture of the Good Acre. I will be sharing a story after I present on the services that we provide locally and some of the work that we do. Next slide, please.
I'd like to just share a little bit about an initiative that we support that grew out of an interest of Latinas in the community that are entrepreneurs. And meeting with some of our staff, they decided to do what they call the group is called Mujeres Latinas Expo, and they decided to do an expo every year where they would highlight Latina entrepreneurs. And they would do a second event where they would still highlight Latina entrepreneurs, but it was a little smaller event, and the focus was on education and information for Latinas and their families. And so we have always done a session on healthy relationships, on how to address violence in the community and other topics, and many times they invite other speakers. So the main goal with this event is to really connect Latina entrepreneurs so that they can create a network of support while they grow their entrepreneurial skills. We do this by providing education and information about resources in the community. And we're only one of many sponsors now of this event. We're the fiscal agent for this event, so that as they raise funds, they're able to keep those funds here, and then we pay out whatever it is that they need for the events. And a couple of our staff from family advocacy maintain relationship and connection and planning with the group. Next slide. Again, some of the benefits of the Mujeres Latinas Expo, including the women that are part of the planning, but also women who participate in by bringing their wares to the expo every year. We connect Latinas to one another and to resources. It's creating a space for Latinas to come together, to share ideas, to learn from each other, to model leadership to young Latinas, and to promote their businesses. And we've had some of our participants in family advocacy participate in the Mujeres Latinas Expo and to gain income. And to also include their children, their teenagers. We have now young women, teens, that started going with their moms and now sell their own product, whether it's jewelry or something else, and they can make money and learn how to deal with that money with their moms. So we're really proud of the fact that this is just one initiative that doesn't take a lot of time. It's not one of our programs. We're a partner with this group of Latinas. And so whenever we can do that, we will do that. Next slide. Sarai.
Thank you, Patty. Under family advocacy umbrella, we have what we call transitional housing, and our model refers to scatter house model, which only means that our transitional housing support, we don't own any buildings, or we don't own any units for rent for participants who exit out of the shelter or individuals who are looking for housing in the community, but rather identify landlords, properties who are renting units and that the participants would want to connect with and reconnect to either their community or stay in their community without having to designate the housing for them. Our scattered housing model has been working for more than 14 years, and annually we support around 15 households with rent assistance and advocacy services, meaning that we serve around 45 to 60 individuals with rent assistance per year. All the individuals we serve under transitional housing services are either homeless due to domestic violence, currently fleeing domestic violence, or at risk of losing their housing because of the domestic violence that they're undergoing. Our support services assist families with up to 24 months of rent assistance that gets paid directly to the property owner or landlord. And these are some of the ways that our advocates assist participants under this initiative. And as you can see, our advocate does more than just assisting to pay rent. They also meet with the participant, do goal planning. They work on creating a cost of living plan or a budget. They also provide housing choices housing opportunities that are available to them, including making the referrals to coordinated entry systems in different counties around Minnesota. We also assist with housing search, transportation to housing appointments. We also assist to apartment tours and assist with application fees and also support them to fill them out. We work with a majority of Latino individuals in Minnesota who might be monolingual Spanish speaking. And a lot of the applications that we fill out are only in English. We also do a lot of the interpretation and communication with property managers and landlords. And we provide deposits, monthly rents, and as I mentioned, up to 24 months for some of the families that we work with. We also provide relocation assistance, including moving kits, bridging referrals that include basic household items to larger household items such as beds, couches, anything that the household might be needing to be able to move and be stable in their new housing. We also try to connect the family with the new resources around the community, which includes assisting the families to connect with their local schools, assisting them to also look for their neighborhood transportation routes, and connecting them to the community agencies that are within their neighborhood. Because we are a domestic violence agency, we also support the participants to either purchase or do a lot of safety planning with them to also pay some of the fees for providing security to them, such as window alarms or security cameras. Next slide, please. Financial literacy charlas or conversations is the proper translation into English, and economic empowerment. In our community, the topic of community empowerment or financial literacy is not as common as you may think, especially for some immigrant survivors who have never had to manage finances on their own, especially in the United States. Many survivors whom we will work with are only one income household. They're first-time wage earners and they're new immigrants in the United States. This often raises challenges when working with participants in shelter or in the community who need basic information on how to navigate the financial system in the US, including knowing what documentation is needed to open a bank account, or what credit is, or how to build credit, but also like knowing the difference between financial products and institutions, and dealing with the distrust of institutions and the systems that we refer them to. We also have to keep in mind that for many immigrants, any systems or institutions, it's always something that causes fear or that they might not be knowledgeable of. So we navigate with them any processes or any system that we refer them to. With that, all of our advocates are training the Moving Ahead curriculum from the Allstate Foundation, and this curriculum covers financial education basics that are meant for advocates to use as training tools for survivors. The topics are to be able to present to survivors in day-to-day conversations, and they relate to financial abuse, learning about financial fundamentals or basics, mastering credit basics, building financial foundations, and long-term planning. We have frequent conversations about their current financial situation. We assist to identify options for earning and increasing income. We assist with navigating the US financial system, including providing banking options. Most survivors of domestic violence either come to us unbanked or underbanked and not having savings accounts either. Another assistance that we provide is assisting them to gather the appropriate documents to establish identity in a financial institution. For some of the survivors that we work with, we know that leaving their home might have meant leaving documents behind and having to replace them. We assist with the cost of replacing those documents. but at points when we're working with new immigrants in the United States, that also comes with more challenging barriers. So that means that we also assist them in trying to get those documents in order for them to be able to open a bank account or a savings account, checking or savings account. Something which we really try to focus on in bringing some knowledge of, it's the understanding of credit and how credit works in the United States, because in Latin American countries, it's not the same thing, or it's not used as it is used in the United States. So something that we try to always talk about with participants, it's in either how to establish credit so they can build assets, or essentially getting to housing as a long-term plan, but also being really clear about this new concept that might not be known to them. And as we're working with survivors, we see that a lot of them might not have as much money as any other individual who is living in a two-household income, but also trying to have conversations with survivors of domestic violence about the priority of saving and making these opportunities available to them really open the paths to asset building and asset ownership. Next slide, please. Our community connections and collaborations. As a domestic violence agency, we wouldn't be able to do everything for our own. We understand and we know that we have to build relationships with other agencies who provide the services and who are experts on these topics, such as financial literacy. Although we present on financial education, our agency, we also have formal partnerships with NIDA, was the Neighborhood Development Alliance, and they also provide financial literacy workshops for our participants. They come in quarterly and they meet with participants and get them certified under the 4 cornerstones of literacy, making certificates available to essentially use for IDA accounts and other products, other financial products. We also work with the Latino Economic Development Center, who is agency. It's a Latino agency that does business entrepreneurship workshops and business development plus lending. So we refer a lot of our participants here when we know that they're ready to essentially start thinking about opening their own business, or who want to know about how to access lending to essentially open their businesses. About 3 years ago, we started collaborating with the Good Acre, who has a culinary vocational training for participants to encourage individuals to pursue culinary career opportunities. The amazing thing about the Good Acre and the culinary vocational training is that they paid for their training, meaning that anyone who participates in the training gets paid to train, and also gets paid to do an internship. And at the end of the internship and the training, most of the participants who participate in the vocational training get a job offer right after completing training. And just about a year ago, we started collaborating with Fair Financial, which is a collaboration between Prepare and Prosper and Sunrise Banks, to provide access to banking, checking and savings account, and credit building for participants. We really like Fair Financial because of the products that they have, but also the low barriers that they have to make their products accessible to our participants, meaning that they either have no maintenance fee, no overdraft fees, or no credit checks for some of their products. And then I would like to share a story about a participant who just recently called us to let us know that she had finally purchased her home. So Rosita first connected with our agency when she found herself at a different DV shelter where she was giving our information. She was looking for support on how to transition from shelter now that she had found a job. She had never rented before, and when speaking to other advocates at the other shelter, they mentioned that it was going to be really challenging for her since she had no credit score established, no rental history in the United States, but also not enough income to apply for housing. However, our transitional housing advocate at the time met with Rosita and determined that Rosita could be a great fit for our transitional housing support as she had clear realistic goals, had employment, and knew how to use public transportation to get to appointments or to get to referrals. But most importantly, she was really open to work with new agencies and new opportunities that were available for her and her children. Through this, Rosita was actually able to secure an apartment with our assistance of transitional housing. And during the time that Rosita was receiving transitional housing rent support, she also learned about how to access public assistance to supplement her income. She also connected with NIDA for the financial literacy classes, and she was also able to learn about the individual development accounts that NIDA made available through FAME. And she started saving towards purchasing a home. Through NIDA, she also accessed information about homestretch education, and she was working one-on-one with their financial counselors. At the same time, Rosita was connecting with NIDA and working her full-time job. She also took part of the Good Acres culinary vocational training, where she was receiving a stipend for her attendance in their training. And after her paid internship, she actually received a job offer from one of the catering companies where she served as an intern. At the end of her transitional housing support, Rosita had increased her income. She had learned new skills, furthered her education, and had a full-time job that paid significantly more than her previous job. Rosita was also on her path to complete the max savings amounts of her individual development account through NIDA to be able to purchase her home. And finally, just a few months ago, Rosita called and she let us know that she was able to purchase her home using the $8,000 that she received from this individual development account that NIDA assisted her to get. And we know that she has learned about the financial system in the US. She was able to work on her credit. She was able to work on her savings, setting always savings as a priority, but also being able to own assets. Rosita is preparing herself for the future and also talking to her children about the opportunities that there are to save and some of the programs that are available to them as well. She's investing in furthering her education right now in the culinary field and soon hopes to own her own catering company. She emphasizes how having had the opportunity to be a transitional housing recipient has really helped her to overall reach all of her goals and become financially stable. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarai. I know we're at time, so there's another story in the PowerPoint, and I believe we'll be making the PowerPoint available. Is that correct, Mala?
Yes, we will be.
And this is another example of one of our participants that's been able to really move forward in a wonderful way, accessing the resources that we have. I also want to just say that our transitional housing support is provided by United Way and also by the Office on Violence Against Women. So we could not do that work without the support of those two funding resources. I want to thank everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that wonderful story of Rosita. As you know, you'll be getting the slide deck so you can read more stories. And if you're interested in reaching out and learning more about the work. We have their email addressed here. I just want to give just a big thank you for everyone for joining us today. A really huge, even a bigger thank you to both Patty and Sarahi for taking your time to share us, on this important topic that we have here. I will repeat what Alexis typed in the chat. The breadth and the depth of your work in partnership with our Latina community is jaw-dropping. I know I learned a ton, and I'm sure our attendees have learned a ton. I want to thank our Women United Steering Committee who made this happen. For those who can stay and want to ask more questions or listen further to hear more stories, we welcome you to remain on. For those who have to leave and go about your day, have a wonderful one. I'll pass this back to Eva to facilitate questions as they come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mala, and thank you again, Patty and Sarai, for sharing your wisdom and again, a jaw-dropping kind of summary of the breadth and depth of the work of Esperanza United. So I encourage people who are staying on for the Q&A. You can actually, we could go about this in a couple of different ways. Feel free to put questions and comments directly into the chat and I can verbalize them for you. Or you can also feel free, we're a smaller group now, feel free to just come off mic and ask your question directly. I did have a couple of questions, but I was just so curious. You had mentioned it at the end of your presentation that there was another story about one of your program participants. Would you be able to just kind of briefly share what
Sure.
share about that woman's story?
Sure, I can. Our partner agencies that Sari mentioned, LEDC, the Latino Economic Development Center, and the Neighborhood Economic Development Alliance, helped one of our participants, many, but this one is named, we've named her Alma for the story. So she took entrepreneurship classes and applied for the required food certifications that she would need in order to move forward with her food business. During this time, she took advantage of our other resources, opening her first bank accounts, filing her taxes, and accessing county benefits that she was eligible for. Her daughters are also active participants with our youth programming. Alma is now often seen selling tamales and other delicious Mexican dishes on Facebook Market and pop-up shops and at the Mujeres Latina Expo. She often says she's very proud to teach her daughters that a single mom of 5 can achieve financial stability when presented with opportunities such as Sembrando Esperanza. She connected with us through our crises line in 2022, and she started working with our community advocacy team to develop an exit and a safety plan. She had filed for an OFP. She moved to a new and safe apartment, and we covered the deposit and the first month's rent. She accessed therapy and started a divorce process. And then she realized she needed additional support. So she really worked with us to access anything she needed so that she could take herself to this end of this story, where she was able to access some additional support so that she could sell tamales. She had her food certification. We really work with the food businesses to make sure that they've got the certifications they need, that they get any training that they need through our partners, so that they can proudly stand up and sell their wares, whether it's at the Latina Expo or other areas across the Twin Cities. And so Alma, again, from Alma's perspective, she has achieved some success, and she's going to work at more.
What an incredible story! Thank you so much for sharing. In hearing about the two participant stories, and then kind of thinking about what at the very beginning of the session where folks were typing in, what was like one word that came to mind when they thought about financial security. Folks are saying, really talking about uh, emotional, physical, all around well-being and health, right? They're using words like freedom, comfort, calm, peace of mind. And it seems like the services and the programming that Esperanza United provides is so incredibly comprehensive, and especially in the areas around how, just broadly speaking, money, right, impacts all of it. Have you seen, what have you seen from folks that have participated in your programming and service, once they have gained, I guess my question is, are you seeing folks also become more, from a mental health standpoint, right? More finding more health and wellness there, also as it relates to their greater economic independence and ability
Yeah.
to navigate there.
I'll mention a couple of things, and Sadi may have more to add. I mean, when I think about Alma, for example, she also participated in our, again, it's not a big program, doesn't take a lot of time. It's called Sembrando Esperanza, or seeding, as hope. And what we do, and it's a project we have that we do across the country, where we give micro grants, $2,500, not a lot of money, $2,500 to 10 Latinas. And we do that here. Then we have 4 other partners across the country where we provide $20,000 for the organization so someone can coordinate this effort. And then $25,000 so that they can select 10 women or 10 youth to get $2,500 micro grants. And so Alma received one of those grants and was able to then again move forward with her tamale business. Others have done some daycare with that to start. Her pop-up tamaleria is over in the corner there. We've got a pop-up coffee cart that started out of the micro grants, and also some healthy relationship podcasts that were done with someone receiving the grants. So the idea is that they do something that benefits the community or benefits themselves in a way that has impact for the future. And it's a very easy process. We've done it now 2 years. And this funding came from a foundation called the Aditi Foundation. And they also then provided the funding so that we could do this with 4 other organizations and 4 other communities across the country. And what we see is the pride and the self-confidence that comes from taking $2,500 and making something for the future. And so, yes, the well-being, I think, does improve. It can improve for the children. The children see their moms in a much better state. We have a participant, a past participant, who has now a very large bilingual daycare center in Minneapolis. And again, we didn't provide any seating for that. She was able to do that as part of her future plans. And so many of our participants who do land in a better place, which most of them do, it may be small increments, and for others it's big increments. They're not shy about telling the beginnings of their story at all. And so it's really been helpful that many of our past participants will call us and tell us, their success story at this stage.
That's really,
Is there anything else?
Thank you, Patty. I think you mainly covered everything, but I do want to say that through transitional housing and the work that we do, survivors have the time to heal. and actually learn about other opportunities that they might not have had if they were working two jobs, trying to make ends meet to pay their rent. So a lot of what they learn, they also transfer that knowledge to their children, and we see how it impacts the whole family. So as a Latina mother, I know that I learned a lot through all the workshops that I attended with NIDA, and that's education that I even give to my children. And I really prioritize to share with participants that are here at the shelter or in the community as well.
It's striking so much of the institution building that you guys are doing, not just for Esperanza United as an institution, but if I'm hearing correctly in the example, right, of the microloans, you're working across the country and helping other organizations to build, sustain, grow their own microloan programs for their communities, and just continuing to enrich the OG program here in Minnesota. Just curious, in our few minutes remaining here, what's what's next? What's on the cusp in terms of, again, thinking about institution building, centering Latinas in the Latina community, especially around the services and the vision that you guys are providing?
Well, definitely our services locally, the gaps we have, and these are community gaps, are legal support for our participants. There are some wonderful organizations like the Immigrant Law Center in Minnesota. Tubman has legal services, and there are some other places that will provide legal support. However, there's never enough. We have participants that have to wait for a while, or we end up, we will pay for some to get the legal support that they need. But that is definitely an area that we're looking at. We've applied for an Office on Violence Against Women grant that would bring in an attorney in-house so that our participants wouldn't have to wait to get services. The other area is mental health. And so that's another area where we are continually trying to find new resources. We had a wonderful therapist that was in private practice, but had really great rates for us so that we could pay for therapy support, who moved to Puerto Rico. And so she did some, because of course through COVID, everybody learned how to operate, remotely, but she could no longer do that remotely after a while. So we continue to look to other organizations that do have Spanish-speaking therapists, but there's very few. And so that's the other area locally that we're doing. Nationally, we are on the brink of launching about a $13.2 million project that was funded by Health and Human Services. And so we have provided grants to 28 organizations, community-based organizations across the country that are domestic violence or sexual violence organizations. And so that's going to take a lot of effort, focusing on some of that work on the national side.
Such promising and absolutely vital and inspiring plans that are in place. So congratulations to you, and we're rooting for you every step of the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're at the 1 o'clock hour, so I think we'll conclude the Q&A portion. But again, just wanted to extend my sincere gratitude. Thank you so much, Patty and Sarai, for sharing space, presenting with us today. Thank you, Mala. Thank you, Alexis, and everyone who attended to make the space what it was today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.